Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Tony D'Angelo's PM Coast to Coast. Now, here's your host, Tony D'Angelo.
And a very good afternoon to you, all the stations up and down the coast of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I should say, the esteemed Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I am your host, Tony D'Angelo, and man, we've got a show for you today. State budgets are being suggested and on the way to passage, and my home state is no exception. Well, perhaps my home state is an exception because of some of the proposals that were raised in the governor's budget this past week. My guest, a frequent contributor to my shows and all the places I have had them, Professor Bob Swick, economist, government watchdog, and student of this entire subject. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about socialism, what's happening in Venezuela. We're going to talk about how we could finally get this government back together. And even though a lot of our discussion may center on Connecticut, it actually has application to a whole bunch of high-tax states where we have our listeners. California, where we're hosted out of, New York, Illinois, worse things happening there. And this is a subject which we need to actually talk about because it's something which is so critical. So what I would like for you to do is sit back, fire up a colorfina, as Tom Snyder would say, and we're going to be coming right back with Professor Bob Swick on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network right after this retromercial.
Anchor bankers have a money market account that offers you a lot more than the funds. A higher rate than average, free now checking, easy access to your money, and federal insurance up to $100,000. So come to Anchor soon and open an Anchor money market account for $2,500 or more. It will pay you to do so. Stop in for full details. Remember, your Anchor banker, he understands.
That's right. Your Anchor banker, she understands.
Alerting the stations up and down the line, Professor Bob Swick, right after this interlude. Ladies and gentlemen, along the stations of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, I am joined by a frequent contributor to my program, Professor Bob Swick. Those of you that have followed the show, you're well familiar with Bob. He is an economics professor. He is an ardent student of municipal economics locally and nationally. And Bob and I have been friends for a while. We were chatting this week about an event which happened in my home state. The new governor, Ned Lamont, had proposed a budget to the state legislature that, frankly, I think in my life ranks up with the Challenger disaster. Maybe not quite Kennedy's assassination, but certainly maybe Reagan's assassination. I'm not really sure, but it really caught me by surprise and not in a good way. And Bob, first of all, good morning. Thank you for being here as always.
Tony, thank you for having me on the show today.
Oh, my pleasure. And what I'd like for you to do, and we're not constrained by time, tell me what, in a nutshell, what's happened in our state of Connecticut, which is very similar to what's happened in a lot of the other places people listen to the show, being California, New Jersey, Illinois. And tell me where you were at and how you were digesting the budget information and your reaction to the same.
Connecticut. And I did watch online bits and pieces of his speech, and then afterwards I started reading basically what was being published about it. I started investigating a little more further through my contacts, being a few people within the Connecticut Republican Party. And I think the budget, first of all, shocked both naturally the Republicans, but it did shock a few Democrats at the same time with his proposals. So let me try to summarize what he basically stated in this budget. There's going to be an increase in spending of anywhere from 1 to 4% over the 2 years. Connecticut uses a 2-year budget rather than a single-year budget for both accounting and finance purposes. The budget increases taxes by roughly $1 billion in the first year, but over the period of the next 4 years, he plans on implementing a full toll system for the state, which will include roughly 50 tolling gantries where people would have to have an Easy Pass module in their car to pay the toll as they drive through. If they don't have that, we apparently would have, as in other states, a camera which takes pictures of your license plate, and then you get a bill in the mail. And I know when my wife and I travel up to Maine, as we drive through Massachusetts, we normally get a camera ticket bill from the state of Massachusetts for the toll that we drove through. So he basically wants to increase taxes by roughly $2.5 billion. But in looking at the way the budget is presented, it still has very, very large expectations as far as how much the new taxes are going to bring in revenue-wise, $1 billion plus. And at the same time, depending on what you read about it, it's still going to present a budget deficit when all is said and done after the 2 years. My honest opinion on the new taxes is just staggering for the simple reason that he wants to expand the state sales tax to 6.35% on an incredible amount of previously untaxed items. One example that I'm going to point out, which I just can't rationalize from an economics point of view, is that when you trade in your car to a car dealership, you're going to have to pay sales tax on the trade-in, meaning that if you trade in a vehicle that's worth $10,000, apparently you're going to pay $635 more on the trade-in, and or your trade-in is going to be worth $10,000 less than $635. I can't get any answers as to how that tax is going to be implemented, but I'll point out, you pay a tax when you buy a vehicle, whether you buy it new or used. If you buy it privately, you still have to declare a value and pay sales tax on it when you register it with the state DMV. So this one change in the exemptions is not even logical as to how they would collect it, so on and so forth. And they're anticipating that this would create an additional $20 or $30 million worth of revenue, which I can't rationalize that either. So that's just one point of the extension of the state sales tax. Another one, college textbooks would now be taxable. I know I have many students over the years who complain they can't afford the textbook, let alone pay state sales tax on $500-600 worth of books that they have to buy for a semester. It also wants to tax all accounting services in the state, which is going to be another
and legal services as well.
The list is endless. It basically will end all exemptions in the state of Connecticut on anything that was previously tax exempt, with the exception of groceries, which apparently is the bone he's throwing at Connecticut taxpayers in exchange for the expansion on everything else.
I'm just going to offer two things here from the annals of D'Angelo, Paragon, this show, this life, the upstate office, the downstate office, the people we employ, Mother Nature, and as Walter Winchell would say, all the ships at sea. we were blessed last year to have a good year to the point where I felt, wow, this is giving me confidence. I started to look at different things. I started to look at new equipment purchases. I started to, and anybody who's in any kind of business, you're constantly going through the fix, replace, or repair daily thing as far as what's there, all across the board, 24/7, 3 in the morning. It's just the way it is, kids. And I said to Kathy, my personal vehicle, it's a 10-year-old Japanese car, has 160,000 miles on it. Hey, the last one went to 350 before I gave it away to Kathy's daughter, who's still using it. And I thought, hey, this one's been around for 5 years. Maybe I'll take advantage of that bonus depreciation under the 2017 Tax Act and get a car I really like. After all, I'm the age that I'm at, and. And one day we're walking in the cemetery, and walking the dog, and Kathy says, well, what do you think's going to happen with the state elections? I said, well, I don't know. It depends. And she said, well, I was reading that there may be a state sales surtax on vehicles. I'm like, I said, I don't know how I feel about that car. So I'm marching this legislature forward, reading the news, the bits and pieces from the quote-unquote mainstream media. A lot of it, as we've discussed, is not exactly telling you what's really happening. And I'm watching this latest thing, and I was talking to my car tech this week, and I pretty much said, look, pal, how long can you keep this car on the road? And I'm not saying that, as far as quote-unquote, look at me, I'm really great, I can squeeze a penny, but don't these people realize that if you have unfavorable tax policy, it directly hits capital spending, which hits jobs?
My opinion, they don't. They are clueless about our state economy. Their only concern seems to be the preservation of this ruling political elite class that we have in Hartford, who make sure they take care of themselves and their families through, very lucrative jobs with lucrative benefits. And, it's a public be damned attitude with everybody else, especially for individuals who are the working middle class of our state economy, who are really saying to themselves, why are we here? What is the point of this whole situation where we're going to be basically taxed on every aspect of any economic activity that we try or attempt to do from a day-to-day basis, whether it's owning our own business, whether it's working for someone, so on and so forth. It becomes economically irrational and economically illogical. But again, I really don't feel most of our state legislature, including the new governor, really has a grasp of how bad Connecticut's economy is as far as job creation, as far as economic friendliness to businesses, as far as our infrastructure is concerned. I really don't believe that they have a clue as to what's going on.
Well, please go ahead.
Just to tie one thing in here, I'm going to relate it to the tolls, because there's a great debate going on as far as the tolls are concerned. You can only imagine the amount of exemptions that are going to be fought for the tolls, meaning that obviously any state government worker in the administration will probably be exempted from the tolls. All our state legislators are going to be exempted from the tolls. The list is going to be very, very long as far as I'm concerned. So this is the way we implement the tax in the state of Connecticut, tolls being the tax. I don't know how you can look at it any other way. That, okay, we're going to implement this tolls tax on the people of Connecticut, but we're going to exempt the people that work for us, because that's the way we need to do things, because that's how we protect our empire, is what it comes down to.
Well, and you're right, and thank you. I mean, the jumping back into last year, the new endeavors that are under discussion here, and my first thought when I looked at what was taking place, and this is especially in this day and age, you turn on any business network, and whenever this subject is discussed, every person will say, money moves. Money is not tied to a jurisdiction anymore. money can move very easily. Businesses can incorporate elsewhere. Businesses can do things elsewhere. In my discussion last night with Kathy in the Thai restaurants, I said, look, there's these endeavors that we're talking about, which honestly are, at least for me, are pretty darn huge. If Connecticut keeps up with this stuff, and it's probably the same, somebody saying something in New York or Illinois, hey, it ain't going to happen here, guys, because why should it? I mean, yes, I will pay taxes on my income because I live here. I don't have a choice in that, but if there's anything I can do to quote-unquote economically develop something and not be hindered by regressive taxation, I mean, it's my obligation as a business person who has to look out for hundreds of clients and workers and everything else. I got to do what's right.
I mean, I agree, and I'll use another example that I studied a little. The sales tax exemption gets taken off people who do home improvements.
Mm-hmm.
So you have, let's say, you need a new roof done on your home. The roof costs $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
Roof now would cost $10,635. In order to get it done, the state now is going to take his cut of $635. A lot of these roofing companies are pretty much mom and pop organizations.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, very small. Now they have a new accounting function they have to worry about. Now they're going to be yelled at by homeowners who are saying, well, I don't want to pay an extra 6.35% on sales tax. Unfortunately, that's the new law now. So, okay, I'm going to let this roof go for another year or two because I don't want to spend the extra $635 on it. So here's an economic activity of $10,000, which creates stimulation on basically three fronts. Improves the homeowner's value, property value, because the roof has been improved. The construction company, the roofing company that did it, now pays their workers to get it done. There's economic stimulation there. The company or store they buy their roofing shingles and supplies from gain in economic activity and economic stimulation. That's all loss.
Mm-hmm.
Because we want to tax this. We need revenue any way we can get it. And if we're just going to make people pay for it. That's it.
Well, something, in listening to the business news over the course of the government shutdown, they frequently quoted a statistic: for every one government worker not working, there were 8 other people, the babysitter, the dry cleaner, the people in the Friday night Thai restaurant, and wherever that person spends that are affected. And I'm saying to myself, okay, look, that's 8 people for one government employee. If I decide to quote unquote thumb my nose at humanity, I mean, Bob, I'm talking 300 people are affected.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's again.
And I'm a small business, or we're a small business.
It's just lost on state government. I mean, they live in a fantasy world of economics where they will be taken care of forever. They will continue to contribute and create such a maze of bureaucracy that eventually more and more people in business, more and more people in the states will say, hey, we've had enough. This is a big country. There's 50 states here. You have 5 states basically you want to stay out of now: California, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, because they're run here economically irrationally. Well, there's 45 other states I can choose from. And maybe I'll start looking at those other states, so on and so forth, which is why we have a net population decline and had it for so many years now. People are saying they've had enough. They're out type of situation.
Now, we talk about that, and we chatted during the week, and we're going to come back to Connecticut, but I want to talk about some of the other things and policies and national policies and the history of socialistic policies and things like that and what has happened, current and past. We're talking this week about Illinois, and I had sent you a message. I couldn't believe it. I almost fell off the chair in the kitchen, where Illinois is looking at, I have a retirement account, say. And I have not drawn on the retirement account, and they're looking to tax, if I was in Illinois, the dividends and interest on that retirement account to pay for a public pension. I mean, is this what it's coming to?
Well, it's the desperation on the
Right.
But maybe you should think about, for example, in Connecticut, the head of the commissioner of the Department of Transportation is coming in at almost $250,000 in salary plus his state benefits and pension. And I'm saying to myself, why is this man worth this money? What is he going to do to turn the state around transportation-wise? It doesn't even make sense to me.
Well,
why you would give somebody that big increase when you're $100 billion in the hole?
And
Obviously,
didn't
there's another story to it, which is unknown to the public, as far as why he hired this person and why he's getting this much money to come in.
Yeah. From what I understand, his newspaper clippings from New York were not all that spectacular as far as what he did.
Right, exactly. I mean, he didn't do that great of a job with I believe it was Metro North. And so, what's he going to do for Connecticut? Is this, a retirement payback job of some reason that, who knows? But it makes no sense to me whatsoever. I personally feel Governor Lamont is in over his head right now. When he ran for office, I don't think he really had a good handle as to see how bad the finances are of the state, how bad the unfunded pension liabilities are for the state. I really don't think he had a clue. I think he was ego-driven as far as his campaign was concerned, and figuring once he got into office, everything, would shake out the way it's supposed to shake out. Well, it's not shaking out. He's realizing, he's got a massive problem as far as running the state is concerned with revenue. There's not enough revenue to handle what needs to be done in the state of Connecticut, given the level of services that it supposedly is providing everybody in the state. And I believe very strongly that his total reliance on the progressive end of the Democratic Party in the state is going to be his downfall in the long run. And I really believe he should have really gotten a better handle on the finances of the state first before you come out with what you basically heard for the past 8 years with the Maloney administration, with $4 billion plus in tax increases, and we're no further into a balanced budget 8 years later than we were 8 years ago. It's the same. It's just the same song and dance. It just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever economically.
Yeah, nor me. Now, as far as quote unquote, we have people. This I can tell you, this show will be well broadcast within the confines of our state and the replay, but we have people listening from all over, and people of various perceptions and persuasions with respect to economics. And I've read and heard one more thing of, this is very simple. You don't have to go through all this. Just bang the billionaires and the millionaires and the high-income people, because it's immoral that they have all that wealth, and they really should contribute for the greater good of all. And if they were paying their fair share, there wouldn't be an issue. And I was walking the dog in the cemetery, and I thought about, now, who am I to call Warren Buffett an idiot? But he made an idiotic comment a few years ago where he said, I pay less tax on an effective basis than my secretary. It's like, Mr. Buffett, you pay less tax because your Social Security is capped and hers isn't. So all of that said, what is, quote unquote, your answer to that? Doesn't taxing the billionaire, quote unquote, save the day for everybody?
Well, what happens with that is, and we're seeing it in Connecticut, seeing it in New York, New Jersey, most definitely, that people with high levels of income, people who are supposedly quote-unquote wealthy, millionaires, whatever, are moving to states that don't charge any sales tax, any income tax. So what happened in Connecticut is the mass exodus of Greenwich, Gold Coast millionaires going down to Florida or other states that don't have a state income tax.
or what is fair.
100%.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, I scratch my head as well because, you know, and as you can see, I'm taking this a little bit personally because our New Haven office, we share with a great group of people who, and I'll give them a plug, the Greater New Haven Chamber. I watch these guys bust their head open every single day with enthusiasm for quote-unquote what can be good. And it's, you know, like, why would somebody looking at Connecticut right now say, yeah, that's a good place for me to go? I mean, it's like, and this is the thing. I say this to my workers. I say this to my clients. You know, we live in this Google, Facebook, Instagram world. We play on a world stage. What we do here has worldwide repercussions. We've got to look at everything because everybody is looking at us. That's just the way the world is today. But, I mean, I guess I say, doesn't our state see this? I guess not.
No, they don't. They don't. They're totally ignorant of the presentation of the state of Connecticut to the rest of the country and to any business. And I agree with you 110% on this. Why would a business relocate to the state of Connecticut? I mean, if I had a business and I had 40 or 50 people and I was a small manufacturer or producer of a widget or whatever type of product it may be.
Yeah, component.
Why would I want to come to Connecticut? Why wouldn't I want to go to North or South Carolina? Why wouldn't I want to go to Florida? Why wouldn't I want to go to Texas? Why wouldn't I even want to go to Tennessee or Alabama or any of those states? And not have to have the economic burden of regulation coming out of your ears, along with all sorts of economic mandates on a business. Why is that an incentive, or how is that an incentive for any business to come here? And I can guarantee you, Tony, over the next few months, we're going to hear the announcements by the Lamont administration. They brought in XYZ company that's going to have 45 workers. They gave them a $5 million tax abatement to get them here. There's no way, shape, or form that $5 million will come back to the state.
Oh, I know.
What happens.
$5 million won't be the revenue for 5 years. I fully agree.
Right.
And I, listen, there's 1,000 ways we could go on this. In your studied and educated perspective, is what's happening in Venezuela right now the end result of spend, tax, or France?
Well, the Venezuelan crisis, as we know, is socialism at its worst. And the Venezuelan crisis is basically a manufactured crisis because this is what happens when a government takes over its economy. And in this case, it's a brutal dictatorship that could care less about its own people. Its people are dying because of starvation. They can't get medicine and so on and so forth. And socialists in our country are basically still embracing Venezuela for whatever reason. They're still embracing Cuba. And again, we're not that far off from seeing a Venezuelan type of situation in our country in certain states. And I think, and I hope and pray there are enough people smart enough on both sides of the aisle to realize that at some point, government intervention into an economy, government intervention into running or modifying any of your behaviors will backfire and will create a situation of literally no return. Governor Lamont in his speech said he wanted to modify people's behavior because he wants to tax soda at 1.5 cents per ounce. And I said to myself, here, if it's not a nanny state proposition, I don't know what is, that if I want to drink a Coca-Cola, I should be allowed to drink a Coca-Cola after paying the 6.35% tax I'm paying on the Coca-Cola anyways. But now I'm going to pay an additional tax because supposedly this Coca-Cola is not
Well, and I'll give you this to ponder too, Bob. But marijuana will be okay for you. You know, it's. It's
well, the point I'm trying to make is, you could tax every supposed sin known to mankind. The sins are still going to happen. People are still going to drink wine or beer and pay the tax on it. They're still going to drink a soda from the fountain or from the the convenience store. They're still going to smoke cigarettes, which is still a big source of revenue for the state of Connecticut.
Oh yes.
It's just endless. It becomes irrational to me how you can implement all these different little taxes every which way and think in the long run things are going to change. They don't. They really don't. And soda to me is it's a ridiculous tax. We see what happened in Philadelphia when they passed the tax. People boycotted soda. There was no revenue coming in. They have to basically get rid of the tax. So it doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't.
Me neither. And I want to take a page here out of the history books, because the other thing you will hear from people is, well, businesses should be more socially conscious and be more of a, as opposed to a profit-making endeavor, be more of a socially supportive endeavor. And there was a man years ago by the name of Henry Ford, who was a manufacturer of automobiles, Ford Motor. And he had a little dream about how to produce rubber called Fordlandia. Can you tell the kids in the audience what happened there?
Well, his theory was he found a great place to get rubber for tires for his cars, and he decided to set up a community which he would run, and basically he would dictate to the people what they could and could not do. And he would have his own officials go into the people's homes and check out if they were doing or following what they were supposed to do, so on and so forth. And after a while, people started really resenting him. They resented the food they were supposed to eat. They resented everything about this utopian socialist community. And eventually, people started getting out of the community, and then it was basically abandoned. And Ford's idea was an abysmal failure. So that, to me, was one of the first socialistic attempts to control those people and his own economy, which failed miserably. You multiply that by numerous countries throughout our history, and it just does not work at the same time.
Now, didn't they also? Yeah, and didn't they also have like a dining hall catered meal and a movie every night too?
Yeah, and I guess the food was not native to Brazil either, so the people there, they wanted their own food. And I guess they were being given American food, and they didn't like it, they didn't like the movies, they didn't like anything. It was just utterly ridiculous as far as what Ford attempted to do. Instead of just realizing he wanted the natural resource, figure out how to get the resource so he can make his tires cheaper.
Amazing. In our closing moments together, I want to ask you two things, and I mean, obviously, speaking with us, it would apply to our state. I think New York's in the on-deck circle. Illinois is probably in the hold, as Vince Scully would say in the Dodger games. California may have gotten there before us. They may have batted before us. What should a government now be doing with respect to spending? And my second question is, what can we all do? I mean, should we start like walking on the freeway? Talking to my legislators, whenever I confront them with this, and if you're listening, I won't call your names, you tend to run from me. What can we all do, and what should the government do?
Government should cut spending immediately, and I had a couple suggestions when Governor Lamont asked for, well, if you think of something, let me know. What he could have done when he offered this budget was something very simplistic, and I will give him the point, he's not taking a salary, which is minimal, but he's still taking his benefits we're so far in the hole right now. We're paying such a high interest rate on our bonds that's not going to help either. So let's cut bonding for 2 years. That's just, got to tighten our belt straps and say we got to do a lot more with a lot less and break this ship and make a balanced budget from our cuts, start looking at long-term implications of our debt, and really address it today. What he chose was basically an extension of the failed policies, economic policies of Dan Malloy, our former governor, in which I'm going to raise taxes, I'm going to raise spending, and we'll just figure out 4 years from now how bad we are, and we'll say everything is fine, vote for me for re-election. And that's just not working anymore.
And I'm just going to stop you here for a moment and let you continue with your thought. I spent many years running a bank trust. And if you run a bank trust, and I say this to the ire of my investment colleagues all the time, you learn to hate mutual funds and some of the games they play. And one of the things that mutual funds will do, and now I'm getting my head back into as being in season, is they will go and they will buy, say, distressed municipal debt. And the reason why they do that is it bumps up the yield. So they go to the bank trust officer, who probably spent like 2 weeks at the banking institute and got through the couple of units, and said, well, I got a really good fund here. This fund is going to, look at the yield I get tax-free. And the reason why you have the yield tax-free is because it's sitting there on very shaky underpinnings. Anybody understanding how bonds work. What I am noticing with these lovely people, if you're listening, I'm calling you out, is the amount of Connecticut bonds in these funds is increasing dramatically. What does that tell you? And California, and Illinois, and New York. Anyway.
Well, it's saying that, as we both know, they can't tax enough revenue, get enough revenue from their tax bases, so they have to bond
exactly
incredible sum of money in order just to try to basically stay afloat. I mean, I'm aware of bonds that we issue just to pay our normal bills in the state, which is basically like using your credit card at home to pay your bills.
And pay your groceries.
And never paying them back.
Yeah.
So it's just an incredible issue. And again, we have a major problem in the state of Connecticut with our state labor union, with the contractual agreements they have, which are nowhere. The benefits and salaries and perks are not found in private industry anymore because they're not sustainable. It's economically impossible to promise what they've been promised and maintain and sustain any type of economic order based on what they've been given. But again, because there's such a major voting bloc for the Connecticut Democratic Party, they never want to change. It's never going to change.
Well, I guess that's my second question of you is I've got to believe still, and maybe, and believe me, I guess I'm still a glass half full person. There's enough people in the state who are seeing it. They don't want to move because of what they're seeing, even though they're becoming very hard-pressed not to. Is there something more and I'm speaking in California, and I'm speaking in New York, and I'm speaking in is there something more we could do? I mean, I do recall about 40 years ago, Howard Jarvis in California had Proposition 13. I mean, is there, I mean, you tell me, I'm sure this is...
Three things got to occur in the state, in these states. The first thing that has to occur, and let me back up a bit.
Sure.
As much as Lamont won the election this past November, he only won by a what I feel is a questionable 45,000 vote count, meaning that there was well over 500,000 people in the state of Connecticut who voted against Ed Lamont. And I really believe those people and the same people who voted against the Democratic regimes in Illinois, California, New York, and New Jersey, if the great silent majority starts to speak, I believe the other side is going to really be very, very fearful of them. Because I see this on a national basis, if we go back to the Clinton-Trump election, to me, the great silent majority spoke, and they wanted a change in government. So they voted for President President Trump, they didn't want Hillary Clinton. So the great silent majority has to speak. They have to nonstop complain to their state legislators, nonstop complain to their governor, nonstop complaints on social media, nonstop complaints and letters to the editor, so on and so forth. Realistically, the states have to bring back an end to binding arbitration on public union contracts because it's not sustainable anymore. There has to be a better way of arbitration between towns, cities, and states with their unions. I don't believe we live in dark age times that anyone who works for state government in any state has inhabitable, inhumane working conditions, as far as I'm concerned. I think they have a pretty good deal. So I think if you eliminate binding arbitration, you would save a lot of money for cities and towns with regard to having to pay these outrageous settlements and union contracts and so on and so forth. And the third big thing that needs to occur is the right of recall. We need, as voters in these states, to have the ability to recall an elected official. Connecticut, we do not have that ability to recall anyone. So someone literally could break the law, which we've seen, and unless they resign, there's no way of getting them out of office. And I really don't think that's fair to taxpayers in the state of Connecticut.
And you know something?
Or any of these states at the same time.
And I think just about every state, because I've been talking to people in a number of states with similar issues, that right of recall and what I've complained about for years in Connecticut, the rate of interest on delinquent taxes, which is bordering on the level of usury. Not one person in one party has come out and spoken against it, and I'm beginning to get very irritated about that.
Just to expand on that, the state of Connecticut has been attaching state refunds from people who attended one of the state universities and apparently had an old bill or whatever.
Yes.
And they're getting their money taken out. Now, I will point out, and I've taught in the state university and community college system for many, many years now, that you cannot graduate and get your physical diploma unless all your outstanding bills are paid. So I'd like to know how these people got their degrees and their diplomas and how these bills were still outstanding. I really believe it's a massive computer glitch on the part of the state university system, and the State Department of Revenue Services is just going along with it. And if they came after me for the $10 bill, I'd be in court. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
Let the courts decide how this is even possible and what's the statute of limitation. Is there any statute of limitation in the state of Connecticut? Obviously not.
Well, and I've always counseled my people that the collection statute in the state of Connecticut is the taxpayer has no rights, period. You've got to shake through every single state agency in order to get a refund, and believe me, I've done that for people. It's just irrational, and I agree with you. I don't know why there's not people aren't screaming about this. I mean, it's utterly ridiculous. I mean, I'm going to think back. Did I have any outstanding bills that I'm aware of from the 1970s that the state of Connecticut could come after me for? It'd be utterly ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, I mean, and I can't think of anybody whom I owe from the 1970s, but my ethnic side still ruminates about a few people that owe me. Anyway, our guest, Bob Swick, professor, economic commentator, ardent student of national events of economics, and just this whole situation of government meeting economics, meeting just about every aspect of our life. Bob, of course, we'll have you back. In the meantime, where can our friends and fans follow you?
You can check out my blog, which is called Swick at swickspeakblogspot.com.
Great, Bob. And listen, thanks and best to Brenda. And, we'll be talking, and we'll have you back the next time a major break in this occurs.
Okay. Thank you for having me on, Tony. I appreciate it.
My honor, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
In the spring of 1982, Dean Witter went against the Wall Street crowd by predicting a bull market when most advised caution. Our advice was unusual, and for those who listened, unusually profitable. Dean Witter can't promise that events back then guarantee the future, but we can suggest you see us now, about the market now, because right this minute, Dean Witter is worth asking about.
Special thanks to my guest, Professor Bob Swick. We'll be back next week with a very special guest. I'm sure you know him. We'll let you know during the week. So for all the stations and the hosts of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network and myself, Tony D'Angelo, have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week. Take care, and thanks for listening.